President Joe Biden says the US is on pace to meet the 31st August deadline for evacuations, despite calls from Boris Johnson and other European leaders for an extension. The decision means the last British evacuation flight is expected to leave tomorrow or Friday to ensure that there is then time for our British soldiers in Kabul to get themselves out. Well, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab joins us now. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. So can you just clear up then how much time there is left to evacuate those need to be taken out before, obviously, time needs to be left to ensure that our military can safely get out within that deadline as well?
Good morning, Charlotte. Well, you're absolutely right. The military planners are firming that up. We've only got days left, not weeks clearly, but they'll firm up the precise timeline. What they're trying to do is limit the period within which they need to draw down their personnel, their equipment. We got 2,000 people out over the last 24 hours on the latest data that I saw. If you take right the way back to April, that's 11,000 people, British nationals, Afghan workers, and increasingly people like achieving scholars, journalists and others who are at risk. We'll continue the effort as at the highest tilt, if you like, at the maximum capacity for the hours and days that we've got left.
So if we think we've got another couple of days or so, that we could be getting between 2,000 to 4,000 further people out, how many are going to be left behind that we won't be able to get out in this phase? Do we know?
Well, it'll depend on how big the window we've got left is and how many we get through. So it's different. And also, in the last analysis, how many actually want to come, because there are some finely balanced cases. But we've, as I say, since April, there's 11,000. Since the evacuation, so when commercial flights dried up, it's 9,000 that we secured safe passage. I can't think of a moment in living memory for the UK where we've achieved such a demanding task in such difficult conditions. And that's a tribute to all of those on the ground. And we'll just keep going at it because we want to get as many out in the time available. And of course, we're doing the contingency planning for beyond August as well.
And what will that involve? Because Boris Johnson has talked about the number one condition, that the Taliban must grant safe passage for those who want to come out. How do we get that? How do we ensure it? What kind of negotiating strength do we have here? What is this going to look like in that next phase?
Well, the Taliban had previously said that they would secure safe passage, allow it after withdrawal of troops. We should hold them to that commitment. They have shown ability to engage on security around the airport during the most recent period. And of course, what they're saying at the moment is that they want to avoid the brain drain from Afghanistan. If that's the case, they're going to have to operate in a different way, a more inclusive way, a more benign way, a less coercive way than they have done in the past. If not, then there's nothing they're going to be able to do to hermetically seal the borders. You'll see an exodus from Afghanistan. We'll make sure that we can support the countries in the region with that, and also be clear that we will continue to live up to the assurances that we've made to process those, obviously British nationals, but also the Afghans that have worked for us from third countries if and as they can get to them. But I think it's very unlikely that the Taliban will be able to seal the border. If they want to avoid that brain drain, which the Taliban spokesperson was talking about, they're going to have to behave in a more reasonable way, and that will include the way they treat their own people, but also the way they engage with international interlocutors.
Well, they have already said that they don't want any Afghans going to the airport. They don't want any Afghans leaving. They've even said that women shouldn't be going to workplaces at the moment.
And this is going to be an incredibly important test, which is why the Prime Minister convened the G7 to forge a clear set of priorities. One of them will be safe passage. The other one will be human rights, in particular, the situation of women. I think the other thing we've got to do, if we're going to exert influence, which is really your challenge to me, what levers have we got? We've got to broaden the group of countries involved. That's why I've been speaking to the Chinese, the Pakistani Foreign Minister, the Indian Foreign Minister. I've got more calls like that to exercise the maximum moderating influence that we can. Ultimately, the levers we've got will be the aid that we're willing to provide. They'll have to provide a permissive environment for NGOs and the UN if they want that to support the situation. We're not going to give it to the Taliban. If they want access to any of the international financial institutions, they'll have to show that they can pass some of these tests.
Given that every hour counts, do you now wish you'd come back from holiday when you were asked to do so? And indeed, do you wish you'd made that call to the Afghan Foreign Minister, who you were seeking help from, to evacuate interpreters?
With the benefit of hindsight, of course, it's easy to say, and I wouldn't have gone on holiday, let alone, and would have come home earlier. But just to be clear, it would have made no difference to the call to the Afghan Foreign Minister, which we delegated and put in the request, because by that point he was already on his way out of Afghanistan. He departed on the Sunday. We only got the request
on the Friday, when you were told by your advisors to come home, and that phone call had been made on Friday. As you clearly are saying, that every hour is so important, something different could have happened, different conversations could have been had 2 days earlier, could they not?
So it's wrong. I was not told by my officials to come home, and the call, the request that we received, or the advice that we received, was late Friday Afghan time, around 6 o'clock. So the idea that in the Saturday, when departure plans were being made by the Afghan government, they would have suddenly been able to deal with one or other element is I'm afraid, just wrong. Yeah. What we were focused on, and all of the advice that came to me and all of my efforts, including when I was away, was on securing the stability of the airport, securing the capacity to process those claims. And since that weekend, so since the 15th of August, we've secured the safe passage back of over 9,000 UK nationals, Afghan workers,
Certainly.
and others.
Yes, and over half of them are Afghans, aren't they, out of that number? It's interesting you say, in hindsight, you might not have gone on holiday at all. Of course, this date was not a surprise. It'd been agreed, it was a deal. It's been known for over a year and a half. Why did you go on holiday? Did you take your eye off the ball?
So I based it on the assessments that we had. So first of all, we'd done contingency planning. We didn't start the evacuation on the 15th of August. In April, I made clear, we changed our travel advice. We told British nationals to leave Afghanistan straight away. My consular teams were providing support. And as I mentioned, something like 2,500 British nationals and Arab, so Afghan workers, came back between April and the formal evacuation on the 15th of August. But what
France
was not
started evacuating in July.
And what I'm saying to you is we started back in April, so we didn't take our eye off the ball. We had the contingency plan in place, but what is certainly true is that the pace of the collapse of the Afghan government and the control that the Taliban exerted was faster than anyone had predicted, including probably the Taliban.
51% of all voters, 41% of Tory voters expect you to resign. What do you say to them?
Look, I'd say at all of those times that you're talking about, I was engaged on COBRA meetings. I was directly managing with our Director and Director General, the FCDO Crisis Response Centre. I was engaged with international partners. And from precisely that point, if you look at the results of the work that I was doing and others in government were doing, over 9,000 people were evacuated back to safety. So I think it shows you we were on the job, we were gripping the issue, myself and across government.
What sense of guilt will we all feel, and particularly, I suppose, those of you who have to make these decisions on the 1st of September, when we have to live with the consequences of pulling out, and thousands of people who were relying on us for their safety are still languishing there at the airport, and perhaps women, many women, in their homes, afraid?
Obviously, the primary responsibility, and this is on the Taliban. They're talking about behaving in a less malign and a more constructive way. They say they want to avoid a brain drain. That's what the Taliban spokesperson said overnight. If they're going to do that, they need to be more inclusive in terms of their government, more tolerant in terms of their people.
On the ground, I mean, it's obvious that's not the case, is it? I mean, are you still willing to take them at their word at this point? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think they have showed the ability to engage constructively in relation to the evacuation effort to date, and it's important for us to set a series of other tests around safe passage. So we will already be doing, we'll continue the offer we've made, obviously, to UK nationals, but also to the Afghans that have worked for us. If they can, either if the Taliban will allow them out, or they'll not be able to hermetically seal the borders, or if they get to third countries. But we will set a series of tests for the Taliban around safe passage, around avoiding Afghanistan being used as a base for terrorism. If they want humanitarian support, they're going to need to provide safe environment for NGOs and the UN.
What is the red line for troops going back, ever? British troops going back? What is the red line?
I'm not going to speculate on that. We're in the middle of a withdrawal, so I'm not going to speculate that. Of course, the United Kingdom retains the right to exercise self-defence in relation to our nationals and our country, but we're not getting speculating into all of that. What I would just say is we'll need to, the Prime Minister did the right thing convening the G7, working through with our Western partners and the biggest economies in the world, how we're going to try and prioritise and exert leverage. I'm also engaged with the Pakistani Foreign Minister, the Chinese Foreign Minister, the Indian Foreign Minister to broaden the group. I spoke to Jean Arnaud, the Secretary General of the UN Special Envoy. How do we bring in the UN? What we need to do is broaden the range of countries that can agree a consensus to exercise the maximum moderating influence we possibly can on the Taliban at this point in time.
Can you bring us up to date? We've been hearing the situation with Farthing. He has this animal sanctuary. I'm sure you're across all the latest with this. And overnight, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has been tweeting about that and saying that now the staff have been cleared to come forward. He's authorised the MOD to facilitate their processing alongside other eligible personnel. If he arrives with the animals, they'll seek a slot for his plane. If they don't have the animals, then they can get on board an RAF flight. So this is all now been sorted out. We just want to clarify the latest on this position.
Well, I think the latest is exactly as you described from the Defence Secretary. I think he's made the point all along that we want to try and facilitate as much as we humanly can. We understand all of the heart and soul that's gone into that charity, but we've got to prioritise ultimately getting individuals out and not see people bumped off or flights displaced for pets. But he's working that through in the way that he's articulated, and we hope that that gets resolved.
OK. Dominic, Raab, Foreign Secretary, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks to talk to you.